Memory is a monster. We forget. It doesn't.
This is a central theme of the hit AMC Plus series, Interview with the Vampire, starring Jacob Anderson as the titular vampire, Louis Dupont-Dulac. In this version of Anne Rice's famous novel series, Louis is a closeted Creole man in early 20th century New Orleans when he meets and is turned by the vampire Lestat de Liancourt, played to perfection by Sam Reid. As Louis tells his life story to reporter Daniel Malloy, portrayed by a razor-sharp Eric Bogosian, the threads of memory unravel and the viewers are left to wonder about the reliability of our own memories. Join us as we discuss seasons 1 and 2 of the seductive, dark, very funny, horrifying, and hella gay Interview with a Vampire.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, mon amis. Welcome to Once More Unhinged, our weekly episode where we get together to talk about whatever we're reading, watching, listening to, or engaging with this week. I am the vampire Ryan something.
Ah, je suis le vampire Jen Katz.
Je suis Rion something. Something.
Rion.
Rion something.
Sorry. Hello. Yes. If you guys haven't figured it out, we are here to discuss
Sam Reid.
This is now Once More with Sam Reid.
As the vampire Lestat.
Just gonna need a moment.
Yes. If you like what you heard today, be sure to like and subscribe. We just have images of him scroll through for 30
an
minutes.
hour of Sam Reid. Be so chill. Yes. So Ryan, I'm so freaking excited for this episode because we are going to be talking about the amazing AMC Plus series Interview with a Vampire, created by Roland Jones. The first season came out in 2022 and the second season came out this past June in 2024.
I have been waiting for this moment. I binged the series 2 seasons in a week.
You did.
Like in 4 days.
Yeah.
And I remember telling you and another friend of ours, I was like, let's go. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Watch it. I want to talk about it. And you did, and holy smokes, you were immediately hooked.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really enjoy having conversations with you about things that we watch.
Yeah, we love it so much. We made a podcast.
We did. That's literally why we did this.
Yeah.
And I got that moment with you while you were watching this because you would send me texts because our other friends hadn't watched it yet.
Yeah.
And so I got to see your real-time reactions to things that were happening.
Yeah.
And questions, which, you know, I just love reliving that with someone.
I do
too. Which is kind of like why we're doing the Buffy podcast. It's like I get to see it for the first time and you've been, you know, a long-time watcher. So anyway, that was part of the fun for me about watching this and then letting you watch it and us recording it.
I think the fact that they put the first season on Netflix was genius because we live in the age, like there's so many streaming services. I remember when this came out and I love Jacob Anderson. Yeah. Shout out Grey Worm Squad.
Yeah.
We stand for Grey Worm. I loved him and I saw this. I was like, oh, this looks really interesting. I love vampires. You just mentioned Buffy. Like I love vampire stories.
Yes.
But I was like, I can't do another streaming service. And so when they dropped season 1 on Netflix, you watched it. Our friend's sister had watched it. And she was like, I need everybody to watch this. Then when you were like, hey, but for real, you got an AMC Plus membership so you could watch.
I did. I watched both seasons on AMC Plus through Prime.
Got it.
And then as soon as I finished the second season, they're like, Interview with the Vampire is coming to Netflix in a week. And I was like, God damn it.
That's right. That's right.
I'm signed up for AMC Plus forever now.
Which I will be too,
which is fine because they're producing some really good content.
They are,
and I don't want to wait for it to come to Netflix, or I don't want to have to wait to see a season that I can watch already. But
not an ad, but go get AMC Plus. Like there's some really good content on there. So
such a good show.
Yes.
You talked about it including things that kind of like check your box, vampires and dark and stormy and moody. This did it.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, spoiler warning, all the things. Okay. We're going to talk about both seasons of AMC Plus's Interview with a Vampire. Spoilers are abounding.
Hella spoiler
Hella
alerts.
spoilers. Okay. We're going to talk about everything. So if you've not watched it, go watch it. Come back, listen. It's going to be a great conversation.
People die. It's a vampire.
Ryan.
It's a vampire show. So I'm not spilling too much right now.
Lots of people die. With that said, we will be discussing themes of suicide, murder, toxic relationships. So heads up.
Tough.
Those are your warnings, people. We're getting into it. Okay.
Okay, let's just get it out of the way.
Sam Reid's hot.
Well, we already got that out of the way.
Yes.
Let's get the other thing out of the way, which is this is not the 90s movie.
It is not. And that is the only relationship I have with Anne Rice's material is the 90s film. I have not read any of the books. I want to now. So I have little preconceived notions about these characters. I was young when the film version came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have seen it. I couldn't tell you all the beats. I just know Brad Pitt is Louis. Tom Cruise is bafflingly Lestat. Kirsten Dunst is Claudia.
Lots of makeup and lots of bad wigs.
Lots of bad wigs, lots of makeup, lots of frilly blouses.
Yes.
I gotta say, with due respect to those actors, but especially Tom Cruise, he's not. Sam Reid is Lestat for me and forevermore. Period. Point blank.
Cut.
Dotted line.
Done.
I think we joked in one of our previous episodes. I said, Tom Cruise, who?
Who?
Look, Brad Pitt did a fine job. Christian Slater as Malloy, fine job.
Okay.
I think all the portrayals in this show just are phenomenal. The casting is perfection in this show.
It really is. And it goes beyond the casting where they really set the scene. And the movie didn't really do that. The movie was, I guess, kind of very theatric.
It was.
Here, I feel like the show creators are really unraveling Anne Rice's novels in a way that sticks closer to the source content and tells a richer story than the movie did.
For sure.
Where there are so many amazing themes in this series told through the eyes of vampires who are immortals. But we get to see humanity in these individual characters that we don't get to see in a 2-hour movie. They're really creating this world and you want to live in it.
Yeah.
Louis being a queer black man in a time where he would have been absolutely discriminated against for a long time. In fact, his entire life.
Right.
But getting to see this character play it out in a way from before he's turned to after he's turned, I think is just a beautiful story. And getting to see Lestat and how flawed he is.
Yes.
How deeply toxic he is, but
how funny he is.
But
though.
how funny he is.
He's got joie de vivre coming in out.
Yeah, he's
the
just
wazoo.
Oh my gosh, out the wild.
Well,
Adam,
sorry. Everything you're saying is so spot on, and this is what an adaptation can be because it doesn't follow the books to the T. I mean, the movie, for argument's sake, quote unquote, did because it's set in the 1700s on the plantation. It's a different time period than the series, which they put, 1910 New Orleans in Storyville, which was the red light district. As you said, Louis is a black man who's closeted, who, yes, had maybe more freedom of movement in New Orleans at that time than maybe other places in the country, but still faced lots of discrimination, which we see play out. We see Jacob Anderson plays Louis' just simmering resentment and rage, but the desire to be a part of this society and recognize, that's an adaptive choice that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's smart.
I love it.
It was so good.
So well
good.
Done.
Yes. And the city of New Orleans is a character in the first season for sure. I mean, we love New Orleans. Yes. We've been many, many, many times. You lived in Louisiana for a while. There is magic in that city.
There is.
And seeing them film on location. Yeah. There are some times where they film stuff, whether it's supposed to be in New Orleans or New York City, and you're like, this does not feel like that place.
Right.
There's Pirates Alley. There's Royal Street. There's all the places that you know and love when you've been in the city and you see it on screen. And I was blown away by the locations and the set designs.
New Orleans, cradles the restless soul. It's very intoxicating. John Goodman once said that there is just something about New Orleans that you cannot describe. It is a feeling when you're down there, and it changes you.
It absolutely does.
Forever. And, the only other city that I can imagine that I get that same sort of feeling is Paris, which
weirdly,
oddly enough is where the second season is mostly set.
Yeah. It's it's great.
Such a good show.
It really is. And again, I don't have any background on the source material. But one of the things I loved about this show is the humanity still tied to the vampires in various degrees.
That's the theme.
Like, I, again, love Buffy, but in Buffy, vampires are basically, they're demons. Right. They lose their souls.
They're bloodthirsty.
They're blood-sucking fiends that don't have any love or compassion. And we see notable examples of that. But like, in that universe, for a vampire to know true love, they have to have a soul.
Yeah. And what this universe does is says you can be turned and still have your soul. And I think, Louis states within the first season, sometime within, I think maybe episode 2, his unwillingness to separate from humanity was a constant struggle in his vampiric experience, unquote.
Yeah.
That is the theme of this show. Louis has a soul.
Yeah.
Lestat really does not. I don't know.
I think again, that goes to the memory of what really happened, what didn't.
What you remember and what you don't. But Lestat frequently touches on the fear of loneliness.
Yes.
He was, what he says was abandoned basically by his makers. He claiming that his maker committed suicide and basically left him
the moment he was turned pretty
alone in a very dark place.
Yeah.
And he fears being left alone. He has a fear of abandonment. And it comes through in all of his relationships where he just overreacts to a lot of situations where he does not have that fundamental grounding that Louis does, because Louis comes from a very close family.
Yes.
He had a very close relationship with his brother, with his sister, not so much with his mother, but he had that camaraderie that I think Lestat has never had. And you can see Lestat when he acts out, it's because he feels like he's been abandoned, he feels like he's going to be abandoned, or things just don't necessarily go his way. He's totally cool with an open relationship.
On his terms. Yeah.
But as soon as Louis engages in a relationship outside of one with Lestat loses his absolute mind.
I could hear your heart dancing.
Which is such a beautiful line.
It is, but he's such a fucking drama queen.
He's a huge drama queen. He's very problematic. He's narcissistic. He's psychopathic. I think that there is a good Lestat. I think you see it because he can be so sweet and charming. But is it genuine? Is it authentic? And I think that's the struggle that Louis has for so long.
Well, and I think that's what the show does so well is we spend just to set the storytelling device.
Please.
We're getting all of the story from Louis's POV. Louis, we start the show in 2022 Dubai. Louis is meeting with Daniel Malloy, investigative journalist, who now is almost 70. He's got Parkinson's.
He's a renowned journalist.
He's like a Pulitzer Prize winner, but he's kind of on the back end of his career. They've already had one interview that went wrong in San Francisco. And Louis like, I want to tell my story. So we're hearing all this from Louis's point of view. And as season 1 ends and really into season 2, we start to question, is this how it really happened?
That's right.
Was Lestat really this narcissistic, psychopathic, toxic? What's being left out? And then we start to get breadcrumbs and bits and pieces of, okay, yes, Lestat exhibited those behaviors, but Louis also was playing a role.
Yeah.
And we all tend to do that as humans. We will rewrite our own experiences.
We remember what happened to us, but we don't always remember what we did to others.
And we can villainize people more so in our retellings than it may have been more nuanced. Not all the time. I'm not saying that, but I've definitely probably made myself more of a victim in some situations.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, when we hear all these stories that Louis is telling Daniel, towards the end, you're like, wait a second.
This is a great story about immortal creatures who suffer from the human condition.
Yes.
You know, and that's what makes this universe so different from, as you said, the Buffy, you know, bloodthirsty vampire, and Dracula, you know, all the kind of darker, more sinister vampire stories. This one is so unique. There is a moment where Malloy is talking with Louis in Dubai. He interrupts Louis at the end of a story and he says, hold on a second. And he plays an audio recording of an interview that he did with Louis in 1973.
Yeah.
And then he plays the recording that he just heard in 2022 in Dubai. And he just kind of looks at Louis and he's like, so what's the real story here?
Yeah.
Because, you know, it seems like it's changing, and can you maybe touch on that as to why? And, you know, Louis just opens Malloy's book, his autobiography, and he goes to like the opening chapter, like the introduction, and he reads a quote of how he got into like a car that he had, like an old Buick that he had, and something else happened. And, you know, Malloy says in his own book, my publisher and my wife both called me out. My wife saying, you never owned a Buick. And then the publisher saying this couldn't have happened because you were here or there. And he refers to it, Malloy, in his book, as the Odyssey of Recollection.
Yeah.
And Louis says, you know, closes the book and he says, will you allow me my Odyssey?
So brilliant.
And it's just so brilliant. I love the writing in this show. There are so many things. There's so many nuanced things that you could miss. And so rewatching it is a lot of fun because I've picked up a lot of things that I missed before that then connect with something later. I love that kind of writing, Easter egg writing, or something that's just so subliminal or nuanced. I'm there for that.
I am too.
I love it.
I just love this show. I rewatched episode 1 yesterday and I caught the Mayfair throwaway line, but just the other stuff. I mean, Jacob Anderson, like we've been going on about Sam Reid, and Sam Reid is not only is he very attractive, but he's great as Lestat. Jacob Anderson as Louis.
Love it.
Watching that episode 1 again.
He's so good.
The nuances from when he plays human Louis to vampire Louis, and him as vampire Louis in the early 1900s, him as vampire Louis in 2022 Dubai. It's so different in a bunch of ways, but it's still kind of tied to the same thread. He is still tied, like that quote says, he can't separate himself from humanity, and he doesn't want to. And as we learn throughout the show, he victimizes himself a little bit more when it comes to Lestat.
He does.
And then we see, you know, how he just Jacob Anderson is amazing. He is so brilliant. And the scene where he holds a knife to his brother in episode 1.
Oh, yeah.
And he basically says, I'm going to bleed you like a cochon, bruh. And the way he says it, I'm like, he's going to kill his brother.
It's so good.
It's so good. And he just looks so angry as a man, a Black Creole man in New Orleans in 1910, who's successful by measure. You know, he's got a bunch of brothels. They live in a nice house uptown. They have a staff, like, you know, when they're having breakfast, there's someone who's serving them. I'm assuming there's a cook. But he still has to just eat the crow of the white man when he taught. And that's like Jacob Anderson does it so well. When he goes, when he's around all the aldermen, he's like, yes, sir, Mr. Fenwick, sir. And he's much more like bows his head a little bit.
Yes. It's to a certain point.
Yeah.
Until the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
He lets his carnal, you know, vampiric animalistic instincts get the best of him.
Yeah.
Which causes more problems, but also leads to a very significant point in their life where they take on a child, basically
Claudia.
a 14-year-old young girl who they turn to try to save her life because at this moment in the show, Louis and Lestat have really not been working well together.
No, Louis wants to have a business. He wants to have, like, he bought the Fair Play and
continues to hang on to these things that are very mortal and humanistic.
Yeah.
And Lestat is more like, you are a vampire. You are a god. You don't need any of this. You can take whatever you want.
Right.
But Louis's definition of like success and happiness is having, being that entrepreneur, being respected, being acknowledged, being seen. And anyway, so they struggle and he ends up saving this young gal from a fire after the city's rioting in the Storyville neighborhood. And so we get Claudia, who in the book, I think is 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And in the film, she was 12 and now she's 14. So, this adds a whole nother layer of complexity to their relationship.
Yeah.
Lestat clearly does not want to create a 14-year-old vampire.
And he's right.
And lists the reasons why this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And Louis is just so beside himself and I think really depressed that he is looking for love and companionship or something to love that will receive his love because Lestat is not good at receiving love.
Well, and it's all, like we've said, it's all on Lestat's term. And I think Louis, he has such a sense of guilt about the fire that almost killed Claudia was caused because he killed, what's his name, right?
Yeah, he killed the alderman.
He killed the alderman. And so there's rioting in all the black and colored neighborhoods in New Orleans. And
the white people start burning down the Storyville neighborhood and really, doing terrible things. It's like a Tulsa riot.
Yeah.
It was just, all out assault on black families.
So they do what a lot of people do is let's have a baby and we'll fix our relationship.
Maybe it'll fix everything. And
it doesn't.
Yeah. And Malloy brings that up later in the interview with Louis. He's like, so failed marriage, let's have a kid.
Yeah.
Have that work out.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the times where we see that that glimmer of Lestat in the person who is grounded in some way because he's like she's going to be miserable. Mm-hmm. This is a bad idea. You don't give the dark gift to children.
Sure.
And we see that play out,
Oh my gosh, she's just a petulant teen the entire time.
Well, I would arguably say until Paris, she's not so much a teen anymore, but the beginning where she's get out of my room, screaming at them.
Yeah.
And
when she comes back, she's changed.
Yeah,
for sure. She had a lot of growing up to do. She saw the world. She had to,
Well, and that's one of, I think, the most devastating storylines of this show is Claudia, who in season 1 was played by the actor Bailey Bass. And then there were some scheduling conflicts. She had another job and she was recast, the role of Claudia was recast for season 2 and played by Delaney Hales.
Yeah.
And season 1, Claudia, the first bit we get of her, she's still very 14-year-old Dear Diary. And I've got Daddy Lou and Uncle Les, and her and Lestat butt heads almost immediately because they are so similar
on certain things. But then it comes to just, being unabashedly vampiric.
They're in.
That they embrace it. And that's where they find their common ground with one another. And that's, I think, the one thing later that you hear Lestat is actually very proud of.
Yeah.
That she went on this killing spree. Her hunger. She's 14 years old. She still has the metabolic hunger that a teenager has, and so she does so much killing. And she's also looking for, when she's away, she's looking for companionship.
Someone closer to her age.
She's looking for someone to choose her.
Yes.
And so she, I think, dabbles in trying to create vampires and fails. Because they find out when she comes back, she's got stuff on her arms where she
killed that one boy.
Yeah.
When they're making out in the car and she tries to turn him and she kills him. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, she kind of gets to go off on her own and make mistakes, which I think, is one of those life lessons of the bird has left the nest. And
right.
You got to fail on your own terms, but always know that there's a safe place for you to come back to. And she comes back and
after suffering a very traumatic event, which has also changed her.
Very traumatic event. Yeah. She meets another vampire.
Bruce.
Yeah,
and he tortures her and sexually assaults her, and it's awful. And so she comes back and she wants to know more about vampires.
Yes.
She's begging Lestat. She wants to know about his maker. Where are the other vampires? Are they the only ones? Like, she wants that community because she already sees that as much as Louis loves her, he's never going to choose her the way he chooses Lestat. He's always going to be in Lestat's orbit.
Yeah.
And she has come back after being gone for 7 years. Things are still not great with Louis and Lestat. And Louis and Lestat have an epic fight where Louis is very hurt.
Epic. Literally a knockdown, drag out
fight.
They knock down walls. Mm-hmm. He drags him outside.
Yeah, Lestat really hurts Louis.
Well, yes.
Well, the first go round, the first time we hear this story, it's pretty much Lestat going crazy on Louis. And Louis defending himself.
That's right. The second time we hear this tale,
it's a different tale.
Yeah. It is Louis has finally had enough and he's defending Claudia.
Yeah.
And really is, beating the shit out of Lestat.
And says things like, I will cut your head off and I'll mount it on a spike.
So interesting. Again, the honesty of recollection. And who's telling the story.
Right. And then Lestat, drops him from basically airplane height. Mm-hmm. And then after that, Claudia, they come up with a plan that they've got to kill Lestat. Yeah. And Jacob Anderson, again, plays it so well where you can tell Louis is not fully on board, but he also knows it probably has to happen. And his role is to just be in love with Lestat and make Lestat think all is well.
Well, he frequently mentions that Lestat is his murderer, his lover, his mentor, and his maker.
Yeah.
And, they get into it later where they talk about there is always this bond between a maker and the other vampire.
Yeah.
So there comes a moment in the interview in season 1 where Daniel Malloy says, so you took Lestat back. This is after the knockdown drag out fight. This is after he's been dropped. And basically, Louis and Lestat are separated for 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay, 6 years. And Claudia is there to help Louis rehabilitate himself.
Right.
See, there's this cute little scene where she brings like a goat into the living room and tries to get him to like go after it, like kind of chase it, so he could regain his strength. And eventually he does, and they settle into a life, just the two of them, before Lestat starts coming back around, and he's love bombing. He's bringing old books for Claudia to read. He records a musical composition, which he hasn't done in over 100 years, for Louis.
He has Antoinette sing it.
He has his girlfriend, his side piece, Antoinette, singing on it, which enrages Louis.
Yeah.
And there's just this is such a beautiful episode. Louis swims across the Mississippi River to get to Lestat faster.
Yeah.
And Lestat's like, you swam the Mississippi to find me. And they rekindle and they reconnect. And anyway, Malloy stops and he says, you took Lestat back. Louis says, the vampire bond. There is no human equivalent. Malloy says, lover, murderer, maker, you took him back. Louis says, it's a bond that can never fully be severed. A bond that makes you believe that there are only two of you on the planet. Freedom and chastity wrapped in one person. And Malloy says, but there were three of you. Yes, 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 is Louis' response. My response to Louis describing a bond that can never fully be severed, a bond that makes you believe that there's only two people on this planet. This is love.
Yeah.
I love how they're describing it like this vampire bond. There's no human equivalent. There is. It's love.
It's love.
And, it's just very interesting how each of these characters is seeking love.
Yeah.
In some sort of way.
Yeah.
It's Lestat needing to know that he's not going to be abandoned and that someone will always be there for him when he needs them. And then there's Louis, who's looking for that love that he never got from the city that he grew up in. He never got the love and the respect.
Yeah.
And then there's Claudia, who's like, I just want someone to choose me.
I don't want to be a band-aid for anybody.
They're choosing themselves or one another. And it is all very toxic, and it just revolves around these three beautiful characters. I love it.
It's great. Yeah. And, they just do it so well because Louis and Claudia hatch the plan to murder Lestat.
They do. There are rules that they set for Lestat coming back.
Right. And he breaks them.
He breaks all of them. I don't know what rule number 1, 2, and 3 were because we don't get that part of the episode, but we do get rule number 4, kill Antoinette.
Yeah.
Kill the side piece, which he does not. Rule number 5.
And he lies about.
You're not my dad. I love that. That's like a written rule. And rule number 6, no secrets. And then he adds his own rule in Jackson Square. He says, rule number 6, when we hunt humans. Because he's just like caught up that Louis does not just want to be like this animalistic vampire.
No, Louis eating rats and animals. And
Louis like, eat whatever you want to.
Yeah, that's the thing I like. Louis not like morally coming down on anybody. He's like, you guys do you.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, eat what you want to eat.
Yeah.
Just
easy.
Yeah.
And, they had me as a viewer rooting for Lestat's death, even though I love Sam Reid.
Sure.
But I'm like, Louis and Claudia are trapped because they do try to leave them one point to go to Europe, and Lestat
stops the train.
Yeah. Kills everybody.
Louis stays.
Louis does stay.
Louis says, it's going to be better and safer for her just to go off and do her own thing and live her life. And, Lestat
won't let her go.
He won't let it go. He knows that something is up between the two of them, and he stops the train and pulls her off, and it's very devastating. And then he basically is trying to force this relationship to work, and it doesn't. So they hatch a plan to unalive him.
They do at a Mardi Gras ball. There's a great scene where Louis and we learn after the fact that Lestat was aware of the plan. Antoinette, he had turned Antoinette. Antoinette was following them, knew about the whole plan. But Claudia also knew that he knew, and Antoinette was following. She outsmarts him, which he shows a little bit of respect for at the end. You could tell he had a moment of like, huh.
And all this unfolding in front of the viewer's eyes, which is just
so
like
good.
Chef's kiss storytelling.
Yeah, they basically convince Alderman Tom Anderson to let them host a Mardi Gras ball to say goodbye to the city.
Yeah,
a big dance. And Louis and Lestat share a final dance, and they kiss on the dance floor. And Louis makes the comment. He's like, and all the stories that were written after, they leave out that part basically because they were more horrified at what two men did on a dance floor than the other events that unfolded. I'm paraphrasing it incorrectly, but so they basically feed Lestat dead blood, which we learn is a way you can kill a vampire other than beheading or burning the body. And he is dying from the blood.
Yeah.
Louis slits his throat. Claudia dips her pen in Lestat's blood and writes his last words. She tries to tell Louis, we have to burn him. And he's like, no, I can't. Leaves him alive in a box in a landfill, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the other way to kill a vampire is starvation. And so they leave him basically underground to starve to death.
Yeah. But he can get rats, so he doesn't starve.
But he does. We go into season 2, and it's basically Louis and Claudia's journey through Europe.
They're trying to find other vampires.
During the war.
Wait a second. We learn at the end of season 1 that Rashid, Louis's faithful butler, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Not who he says he is.
He is the vampire Armand. Who is introduced by Louis as the love of my life. And I said, no. I said, absolutely not.
He's not the only love of someone's life, because he was also the love of Lestat's life for a while.
I think Lestat might have been the love of Armand's life.
Well, listen, what I'm trying to say is that
Lestat pieced out real quick.
That things just got more complicated.
Correct.
Because Louis is now living with, and evidently has some long history with, Lestat's ex.
Armand. Vampire Armand.
AKA Rashid. Which is very interesting.
Yes, because Rashid, it's so good. And I love who plays Assad Zaman plays Armand.
Also hot.
Also, I mean, it's just like a trifecta of hot with Jacob
three,
Anderson, Assad Zaman, and Sam Reid. It's just too much.
I want to go to a Halloween party in New Orleans with the three of them. And just, drink champagne.
Pal around.
Talk about it.
It's so good.
Just become roommates. And
just best pals, study buddies,
They were the best of friends.
They were the best of friends.
History will tell.
Bachelors who lived together for years.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, God, that'd be amazing. So, sorry. We go, like you said, to Europe. World War II is raging.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really meet the vampires like they think they're going to at first.
They don't. And we find out that because of the war, the vampires have bad blood.
And now they're too busy dying.
And now they can't get their shit together.
Yeah, I mean, Claudia encounters... Basically, this is like a horror movie zombie vampire.
It is. I didn't know where we were going with this.
I didn't either.
They're introducing a new sort of like creature.
Yeah, same.
To the story. And I'm glad that they didn't. I'm glad that they just really stuck with vampires.
Yeah.
So yeah, the vampires are having an issue really controlling their population and staying alive because of the impacts of the war.
Yeah. And
they find their way eventually to Paris.
They do.
To the grand city. And
the Théâtre de Vampire.
They end up trying to start a new life in Paris, and they run across a troupe of theatrical vampires.
Yes, led by, and they're a coven. They're called a coven.
They are a coven led by Armand.
Also known as Amadeo, also known as Arun.
A.K.A. Rashid.
Yeah. Which, sidebar, when Malloy learns that Rashid is Armand, then we're introduced to the real Rashid, and Malloy's always like, okay, real Rashid.
I love it.
Malloy is kind of a brat, and I love it.
He is very snarky. He is someone who is also a product of his life and the choices that he's made in it.
Yep.
He's very bitter.
Bitter.
Bitter about a lot of stuff. He's also getting older.
Facing his own mortality.
He has his own mortality, his Parkinson's, so he understands that the quality of life that he does have left is very limited.
Yep.
And I think he's just kind of a sasspot.
He is, and like I said, Eric Bogosian.
And plays it. Perfect.
He's great.
He really does.
Did you remember that he was Gil from Shameless? I did not.
Yeah.
Until I was looking at IMDb and I was like, holy shit. Yes. Yeah. I just didn't think about it.
No, he's a great character.
He's a great actor. So, like you said, we're in Paris. We meet Armand, but also some of the other the members of the Théâtre de... Is it?
We do.
Théâtre du Vampire?
Yeah. Including Santiago.
That
hands down one of the finest actors I have ever witnessed on screen.
He's brilliant.
He is brilliant. Santiago, played by
Ben Daniels.
I don't know his background, but I can only imagine that it must include some theater because he nails this part.
If it doesn't, put him in the theater.
That's right. Put him in the theater.
Yeah. And then we learn, and I liked this kind of twist. We learned that this coven of vampires who have a theater troupe.
Oh, this was so good.
This is so good.
This is great.
We learned that the vampires of Europe weren't always just these like gads about town. Like when we meet Lestat, he is still old world. I think Louis comments, he's like, that explains the cloak. He's dressed like, very old European vampire. But when we see these flashbacks from Armand, they were all living like underground. Yeah. They were basically whittling away. They were following the old rituals, but they were not a part of society.
Yeah.
They were just raggedy and sad. And then now they're like doing a theatrical performance, killing people on stage in front of
and it's interesting
people
that you point that out, because it is Lestat's character, in the way that Anne Rice has written this character. Lestat is tired of being underground.
Yeah.
Lestat does not want to be relegated to the shadows. He wants to live life. He is a god of sorts, and he wants to live life as such and not be relegated to the underground. So what he does in Paris is he forms this theater.
Yeah.
And I love this moment when Claudia and Louis are visiting the theater for the first time and being introduced to all the vampires. Because it's already like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like vampires meeting vampires for the first time. Like, is there going to be like a power struggle? Of course there is.
Right.
And they point out, oh, yes, the theater and one of our founders.
It's a painting.
It's his portrait.
And Louis all but like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
No, we're all like, oh, Jesus Christ, what does this mean? You know, there's no place safe for them.
No, and I love that we get the kind of flashback because Armand met Lestat when Lestat blows into Paris.
Yeah.
Killing people. He's an actor on a stage.
He is.
And he's like, like doing his whole thing. And this is when Armand and the Coven are underground. Yeah. They show Armand, who in present day Paris is coiffed. He's stylish. He looks good. 1700s Armand is he's got the good hair. He's in 1700s, he's got a raggedy little Paul Revere pony. He looks like he's an extra in Les Miserables. Like, it's all ratty and tatty. And he's in the theater watching Lestat. And he's like, the fuck is this guy doing? I mean, Lestat, that was one of the things, like you mentioned, his maker made him, Magnus, then just threw himself on a fire. Didn't teach Lestat all the rules about being a vampire.
Right.
So Lestat's like, yeah, fuck this. And he left him a fortune.
Yeah.
So Lestat goes and lives his life.
He's a very privileged, spoiled little brat who has an affinity for the arts.
He's got a dramatic flair, some may say.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the first season when they go to the opera and it's like, I actually went to the opening of this, Don Pasquale, and he's, singing along with the music. And Louis points out, he says,
this is killing me.
The only humans that Lestat respects are humans with a musical talent.
Artist, basically.
An artist, background. Anyway, and then the tenor fucks shit up on stage.
He's pitchy.
He's pitchy. He's off pitch.
This was such a moment.
Lestat decides that he's gonna, like, Louis says, then I knew the hunt was on.
Yeah.
And he kills this tenor with kindness after the show and then takes him back to their apartment or to
their
townhouse, and he's literally practicing with him on the piano and and pointing out the notes that he's missing.
This is the note as it was written.
And because because the tenor basically ruined the evening for him at the opera, he ends up slowly killing him for the rest of the night.
I mean, it's a terrible thing to do, but what a fucking bitchy thing.
I love it.
For Lestat. It's so, and that's his character.
It's his character, and it's just really great writing.
It's so funny. So one of the other things with season 2 that I loved is it starts off so tonally different.
Yeah.
And I remember texting you being like, oh, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And I feel like they did that on purpose because you think season 1 was so good. It ends on the cliffhanger about Rashid is Armand and Louis has been with Armand now for 77 years. It's what's going on. We go into this, dark, kind of depressing state with Claudia and Louis, and it just felt different. And then they're doing it on purpose because you're seeing the threads start to come apart. You see Louis is not happy. He didn't just murder Lestat and then traipse about Europe with Claudia. He's not ever really fulfilled. I mean, he tries photography for a while, which who amongst us hasn't tried a new hobby when we're like depressed or anxious and we're trying to find fulfillment. Yeah. And I love that they make him not very good. But that comes back around with Armand when he's like, hey, how did these photos get in here? And can't get in all that. But they get you back in season 2 in a different way than they did in season 1. And then we see them integrate with the Coven, but they have to keep the secret of Lestat to themselves because they learn one of the great rules is you cannot murder a vampire.
Yeah, so this is one of the most interesting things that comes out of season 2 is we find out that in this universe, the vampires operate based upon a set of archaic rules. And like rule number 1 basically is you don't kill another vampire.
In cold blood or something.
In cold blood. There's a lot of rules. And I don't want to get them wrong and everyone starts screaming.
I know people are probably already screaming, but basically if they find out they just murdered Lestat, it wouldn't be good.
You can't murder another vampire. And you're not allowed to.
No. And you're not supposed to turn someone who is sick, which is interesting. And we will circle back to that at the end of our conversation.
And you're also not supposed to turn someone without the approval of the person in the coven, like the coven leader or something like that. So there's multiple rules, which I find so interesting.
Yeah.
When in season 1, they have these rules for Lestat.
Right.
And rule number 4 was kill Antoinette.
And he didn't.
Lestat knew at that moment. He could have said, hey, y'all, we operate by a set of archaic rules. As your maker, I have completely forgot to fill you in on what those rules are.
Let us chat.
He didn't do that, which comes back to bite them in the ass in this season.
Right. Because
season 2.
I'm assuming you can kill a vampire in self-defense because they're all fighting. You know what I mean? But like
perhaps.
Well, yeah,
like cut.
We don't know.
Yeah.
So Louis and Claudia immediately get on the same page because vampires can also read minds unless you are the maker. A maker cannot read their fledgling's mind.
So they're really having to show a lot of discipline, which for Claudia, as a 14-year-old, even though she's been alive for 30-something years, is difficult.
It's difficult. And she broke another rule. A vampire will not basically expose themselves as a vampire or provide a written account of their history.
Oh, yeah.
And she's kept diaries ever since she was turned.
About everything. Which comes back to bite her in the butt.
Yep. And so Armand basically figures out very quickly that Lestat was their maker and there's a history with Lestat. And he and Louis engage in a relationship.
Yeah.
We learn that Lestat and Armand once had a relationship, but Lestat left. And Claudia starts integrating with the Coven. She's welcomed into the Coven. She becomes an actress in the Théâtre de Vampire.
And I love their shows. You know, it's very Paris for that time period where they've got, you know, like the reel going in the background. So they're using different formats,
different media,
of artistic expression. And I love it. When they get to the trial of Louis and Claudia.
And Madeline's up there too.
And Madeline. There is just this wonderful cartoon retelling of their lives.
Yes.
Which is just brilliant the way that it plays out. So I love all of season 2 for, you know, the Paris of it all. Claudia trying to find, you know, the history of vampires and trying to fit in with the troupe. And Louis going along with it for the sake of her.
Right.
All the while, he's being haunted by Lestat.
Dreamstat, as they call him on Reddit.
Dreamstat.
And Sam Reid, I think, gave an interview where he talks about when he plays Dreamstat, he's mimicking Louis' mannerisms.
Oh, cool.
So if you go back and watch that, and I did watch a clip, he puts his hand, he mimics what Louis is doing while they're talking because he's like, I'm a figment of Louis' imagination. He's having these conversations with Lestat. And Claudia, this is why I mentioned earlier that this is one of the saddest storylines on the show for me is everyone tells Louis she will never be happy.
Yeah.
Armand, I think, even says she's going to throw herself on the fire in a few years.
Yeah. Because
she can never fully get over being a 14-year-old trapped as an immortal.
They all think it'll drive her mad.
Yeah. And she cannot find fulfillment. We see a little bit when she's in the Coven and she's on stage and her first couple performances, she's like, I don't like windows when, you know, the whole thing. And then by the 500th performance, she's like, I don't like windows when they're closed. Yeah. She's not happy. She turns Madeline, who that actress, we see a couple episodes in season 2, Claudia meets a dressmaker who had a rough go during the war for being a Nazi collaborator. Yeah. Her name is, Madeline Pavier. Claudia saves her life, turns her. It's great.
They have this great little romance where they realize that they are connected.
Yeah.
And, it's a very similar to like a trauma bond.
Yeah.
Both of them are suffering through this trauma. Madeline post-war, Claudia post-Lestat. And, they find one another.
Yeah.
And there's something there, and you can tell that these two women love one another. And rather hastily, Claudia decides that she's going to turn Madeline.
Yeah.
And, that's a big decision. And when Louis finds out about it, he's not too pleased.
No, and neither is Armand. Armand's like, no.
Yeah, because here come the rules again.
Right.
Which is not allowed to do this. You don't have the authority to do it. You don't have the power to do it.
You've revealed yourself as a vampire.
Revealed yourself. Like, there's so many rules that are being broken here.
Yeah.
And Claudia being Claudia
pushes,
and Louis being Louis consents. And so they make her.
Yeah.
And in the midst of this,
such a beautiful scene.
While all this is happening, we also find out that the other vampires have now uncovered their secret. They have exposed who Claudia and Louis are by finding Claudia's diaries.
Yeah, so they've learned that Claudia and Louis murdered Lestat.
Yes.
Fled to Europe.
Yes, and have taken Armand's attention away from the Coven.
Yes.
And so
Santiago
decides, this is no me gusta, and I'm going to take over.
He's going to be the maître.
I'm going to take over the Coven, and we are going to put Louis and Claudia and the new vampire Madeline, thank you, Madeline, and Armand on trial. And Armand can either help or he can hinder this process, and his decision will determine our course of action.
Yep.
And we get an old French skidoo here.
Le skidoo français.
Yeah, so Armand turns on
he does
Louis and Claudia.
But when we first see it play out, he says, I didn't have a choice. And that's the episode I could not have hold on, I think I have it in my notes.
Episode 5 and 6.
Oh, so episode 7 is titled I Could Not Prevent It.
That's right.
And from Armand's retelling, he's like, I couldn't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
This was a coven. There were all these rules. He's like, but we hear from his point of view, I had no idea what was going on because they're rehearsing this trial, but under the guise of rehearsing another play.
Right.
And we see from Armand, he's like, I had no idea. I was the fool. I was being fooled.
Yeah. And it's devastating for Louis and for Claudia when they get to episode 7, which is the trial.
Oof.
And I mean, it is one of the most compelling.
Such a beautiful episode of television.
Yes, it's one of the most compelling and beautiful episodes of television. I loved it. I told you when you were getting ready to watch it, I'm like, watch 6 and 7 together.
Yeah.
Because 6 ends with them actually being put on trial. 7 starts with the actual trial. And I love the transition from 6 to 7 because for an entire season, for 5 episodes, going on all the way through the 6th episode, we believe Lestat to have met his death, or at least just be someplace where he cannot impact Louis and Claudia any longer. And the last thing that we see, and this is like the best cliffhanger outside of like JR in Dallas, we get this wonderful moment where the trial has started on stage, and Samuel the vampire makes his way backstage down the stairs, and he says, 10 minutes until your curtain, Mr. Lestat. And you see Lestat, and he's sitting there in front of a mirror in this beautiful chalk stripe.
Oh, the
3-piece suit, which is
his hair's a little longer. You look great, by the way.
His hair's longer. He's smoking his, and that's how the episode ends. It is just like he's back, and then they immediately get into it in episode 7, where they have the trial, and basically Lestat is playing the victim. He is on the side of the prosecution. And they've
rehearsed this with Lestat. We learn in flashbacks. Lestat was there.
I find out they've rehearsed it. The audience is the jury.
Yes.
And this is the one and only daytime matinee performance in the history of the theater, the vampire. It is a powerful episode of television.
Yeah.
And the writing is absolutely incredible.
They've hindered all 3 of the vampires, Louis, Claudia, Madeline. Madeline just looks dazed. It's brutal. They've sliced their Achilles tendon, like the backs of their ankles, so they can't really walk.
So tough.
They have they hive mind them because Claudia and Louis at multiple times are like, that's not how this happened. He's in Claudia one time. She's like, he's alive. We didn't kill him, you know? And like,
she's trying to make a good point.
They hive mind them so they get confused, and Louis is just looking at Lestat in some shots, and
then he's also looking at Armand, who
is
saying,
against.
"I was held captive in the the director box by Sam, the vampire, And, there was nothing that I could do to save them.
Yeah, I could not prevent it.
I could not prevent it.
And what he could not prevent is the judgment against Claudia and Madeline to be killed.
Give Santiago the Tony Award for this, the BAFTA for this performance on stage in the trial.
As the judge or whatever.
As the judge. I mean, there's just so many layers of complexities of acting where you're in a TV show and you're playing a vampire, but you're playing a vampire actor, but now the actor is playing a judge in a trial, putting other vampire. It is just great.
I love whenever Santiago in any performance, he goes, and I despise you all for it. It's so good. Yeah. And so basically we have the trial, like you said, the crowd is a jury. What say you for the vampires, Madeline and Claudia?
There's a beautiful moment before they come to their decision.
That's right. Yes.
Where there's a point of order, which was Madeline was turned, against her will, is what they say.
After the events
had happened. And so they give her the choice. Renounce her. Thank you.
Yeah.
So they say you can renounce Claudia and Louis and you can join the Coven or you can die with them. They make her get up and they make her give the jury, what say you? What are you going to do? And she says,
I am the vampire Madeline Epavier.
Yes, I am Claudia's, soulmate forever, basically. Is what she
Claudia
says.
is my coven.
Claudia is her coven, and she chooses Claudia. And in that moment, it's just so sweet. I've teared up twice.
I have chills talking about
watching it. And she's essentially condemned herself to death.
And Claudia was chosen. Someone chose Claudia.
Chose her. So,
and when they say, what say you for Madeline, the vampires, Madeline and Claudia, the crowd yells, death, death. And then when what say you for the vampire Louis, they start to say death, but then all of a sudden we look at Armand, and Armand's like doing his mind powers.
Yeah, they show Armand. And so we assume that, Armand has been, mind controlling them. And then Armand says banishment from the box. And then everyone else says banishment.
Santiago is pissed.
Santiago is not happy with the jury or with anyone.
Yeah.
Because that was not what was in the script. And
yeah.
You got to stick with the script.
You can't go off script.
So there is this just gut wrenching set of scenes that are back to back, which is they pull Louis off stage, kicking and screaming. And he's screaming for Claudia and he's screaming at Lestat, and they are basically taking him and they're going to bury him alive in the crypt. That is harrowing.
They
say they're going to banish him to Uruguay or something like that, or Bolivia. Yeah. And they don't. They put him in a coffin, a sarcophagus, and they load it down with rocks where he can't move. And they nail the lid shut and they throw him in the
crypt.
In the crypt, and they write his name on it. And upstairs on stage, without him being able to do anything about it, they have condemned Claudia and Madeline to death. And, Santiago says, what time is it? And, it's 1:20 something. Is like, it's about bedtime for us vampires.
Yeah.
And I love how they always say, what you're about to see here is not real.
Yeah.
Right? They're trying to convince people this isn't real.
Oh.
And all the vampires hide behind a blackout curtain, and a window is opened up in the skylight is opened up,
and then burns,
and the sun
Claudia
comes through and takes Claudia and Madeline to their death.
Yeah, it's so sad.
It is so sad. And the last thing, the only person left on stage is Lestat, and he's making eye contact with Claudia the entire time.
Yeah.
And it's just like this.
And you cannot read
defiant the entire time.
You can't read what Sam Reid's emotions are.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I look and he looks sad. He looks almost proud of her. He's such a good actor that you're left to kind of wonder, are you happy this is happening? What's going on?
I noticed that in season 1, rewatching it last night, Lestat and Claudia are on the train.
Yeah.
Lestat has stopped Claudia from leaving again. And Lestat tells Claudia when he's squatting down in front of her.
He's covered in blood, right?
He's killed everyone on the train in order to stop the train. He says, we endure each other for his happiness. Do something like this again, and I'll turn your bones to dust.
Ooh.
Foreshadowing from season 1. And so I think that there is that moment on stage, the look that they share between each other, where I do think that he mentions in the trial, you know, how bloodthirsty she was when she went on the rampage. I think he was proud of that.
I think he was.
I think that that was something that he wanted to take credit for, but couldn't because they were on trial for all these things that were going on. And then I also think that he never wanted to make Claudia.
He didn't.
And that they always butted heads. And he did warn her in season 1.
He did.
Do something like this again and I'll turn your bones to dust. And
that's what happened.
And he did.
I do love that Lestat goes off script, though, and goes off book in certain times.
I love that,
because Santiago gets up like flustered. I mean, I can't remember what is said, but Santiago says, and that's, you know, that's how it happened, right? And Lestat goes, that is not how it happened.
Yeah.
You know, and he says at one part, he's like, this is not a story of butchery. It's a story of love.
It is.
And Santiago was like, oh, this fucking guy's going to blow it.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then, you know, we're hearing all this being told to Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, you know, Claudia's murder.
Someone has, meanwhile.
Throughout
season 2, someone has slipped Daniel some information that could be compromising to Armand and to Louis.
Yes. Mainly Armand.
But it could also put Daniel Malloy's life at risk.
Very much so.
By having this information.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. So Louis, basically, they finish the story after Claudia has been killed. Claudia and Madeline have been killed. Armand moves in with Louis because he says, I can't be with the Coven anymore. They basically spend the next 77 years traveling, and Louis ends. He's like, and that's all it is. That's the end. Meanwhile, while all this had been going on, like you said, Malloy has been approached by a mysterious man. I think his name's James Raglan, who we learn works for the Telemasca. And they follow supernatural stuff. It's in the Anne Rice universe. We're not going to get into them right now.
It's like the FBI of the vampire world.
And witches and stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he basically gives him another copy of the San Francisco tapes. Yeah. And photos. And we get a backstory of what happened in San Francisco. While previously we had just thought, you know, Daniel, who was a junkie at that time, he was doing drugs, stayed up all night talking to Louis, getting his story, which was wildly different than the story we're getting now. It ended with Daniel asking Louis to turn him, Louis freaking out, biting him. And that was the end.
Yeah, he said, this is the part of my story back in San Francisco where you said, and I paraphrase, give it to me, make me a vampire now. Yeah. And he says, well, in the eyes of a 20-year-old, you were wasting a gift. And Louis offers in Dubai, he says, I'll give it to you now. A still hand and time to watch your daughters marry. And Malloy says, and divorce and die. Like, this is so good.
And I wish that's where that would have ended.
Yeah,
but we'll get there.
But it doesn't.
It doesn't. So we learn in San Francisco that that's not how the story ended. Louis does bite Daniel. He is interrupted by Armand because as Louis is biting Daniel, he's ingesting the drugs. So he's gone cuckoo bananas. And Louis goes up to the roof, walks out into the sun. He's ready to end it. Yeah. He is saved by Armand. Then Armand keeps Daniel for 3 days, right? Or longer.
I think so.
And Daniel's just in this kind of state of confusion. He's bled out. And Armand basically reads his mind and tells him what a terrible person he is and wipes his memories and Louis' memories of all of this. Both of their memories stop when Daniel's bitten.
Yeah.
We uncover this. So we're like, okay, Armand's lying about this. Why? And Armand says, you asked me to wipe your memories. You didn't want to remember walking out into the sun. And then we learn from Mr. Raglan, he has also given Daniel the script of the trial from 1940s. From
the vampire Sam, who was the only person from the Coven to have escaped Louis' wrath after the death of Claudia.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, Louis goes on a rampage. He kills everybody except for Sam.
Because Rashid / Armand pulls him out of the crypt.
Yes. And so Sam had given a script to the Telemasca because I guess he worked with them as well. And we learn not only did Armand know what was happening, he was a part of it. He was the director of the trial. Yeah.
Yeah. Unbeknownst to any of us, and including his partner of 77 years, Louis, where he's taken credit for saying there's nothing that I could do to stop it. Claudia's death, he means, but he claimed the mind control of the audience, which it turns out was not him. It was Lestat.
Lestat saved Louis.
Such a good twist.
It is.
And I love that Daniel is like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
And he puts on like the telenovela music, The Days of Our Lives. And he's like, this is such a soap opera. This is such a telenovela. He's like, oh, he goes in the portrait of Lestat hanging in the theater. He's like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, it's just all too much for someone as cynical
as
Malloy. But, you know, he points out that, you know, this is being told in such a romantic way, but it's leaving out so many bits of like key information that just don't add up. And in this moment, you know, Armand is exposed, and it's really tough for him because Louis and Armand confronted Lestat after the trial, after the Coven had been murdered. He said, I'm here to murder you.
We're done.
They find him basically in the dungeons where his maker had turned him, Magnus. And, you know, he's there and it's dark. And later we find out that in that moment, when he had a moment to stand up for himself and say, I protected you, he didn't say anything because it was an act of love by saying, I gave you to him, basically. Like, I wanted you to be happy with Armand, go live your life.
Oh, it's so good.
You know, it was very self-sacrificial, but in a way that's like, it's eternity. So, you know, like at some point the truth's going to come out.
Well, and that's what he says. He's like, I wonder how long it'll hold. And then he, you know, basically when he says he's going to kill you, he's like, you can't. Like, I have the blood of Akasha in me.
He does.
And he looks at Armand. And I didn't catch this until someone on Reddit, shout out Reddit, pointed it out. You think he's saying it to Louis like he doesn't know who that is. He's saying it to Armand. And he's basically letting Louis know, you might be with Mr. 400-year-old vampire over here. He doesn't know everything. And that's what the actual script says. Lestat looks at Armand as he says, I have to be willing to die. And he's like, and I'm not in the mood. The way he says it's so good.
It is so good.
Yeah.
Sam Reid nails every single scene.
He does.
As the vampire Lestat.
And his final scene with Louis in present day New Orleans.
So after we get the fallout in Dubai, there is a kerfluffle with Armand and Louis basically tells Armand to leave, to get out, and to not harm Daniel. And the next thing we know, Louis is off on a journey. He is revisiting kind of the steps of the places that are most sentimental to him, and he goes back to New Orleans. He goes to their home, and he's standing outside with like a tour group that's telling stories of all
wearing a Saints hat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great. It's perfect. Great. It is very real. And they're telling the story about how this place is spooky and it's haunted and there's like mystical things that have happened here. And he's just kind of grinning in the background when he notices a young man who is picking up rats. And he follows this young man because it's just all too a little coincidental, and reminds him of the days that he was a little rat catcher himself. And they wander back to the streets of, it looks like probably the 9th Ward, in an area that's very rundown. And he finds his way into this shotgun house, and he can hear the song that Lestat wrote for him being played over and over and over. And he stumbles upon a very, you know, recluse Lestat.
Sam Reid again plays it so well because you can tell in his body language he can't tell if Louis is real or not. And they've confirmed that in their mind of the character, Lestat was also having a like dream Lou. And so he cannot tell if Louis is really there or not.
He doesn't know what's real. And he's, you know, just in this terrible state. I mean, that the house is falling down around them.
There's a hurricane about to happen.
There's a hurricane brewing, which is just so poignant because there's earlier in the trial where they talk about, you know, Lestat being a hurricane, and also Claudia making mention that she's just a shingle
on the roof of their storm,
off of a roof in the storm of the two of them together. And you have this moment where they reconnect, and it is so beautiful. And then Lestat says, "Siri, pause."
And the way he says it, because he's
doesn't skip a beat.
Siri, pause, and then he's just right back in it, and it's so good. And they basically,
it's perfect.
It's the first step towards something. We don't know what it is.
Sure.
And when they hug, and Lestat's face is just like, oh, this is happening. This is really happening.
There's just
Louis,
this
sweetness.
Beautiful moment where he says, "Was that you in 1973?
Yeah.
Were you okay?"
Yeah.
And he says, "No, I wasn't." And he says, I could tell, like I could feel you. Like I knew it, but I didn't know what I could do. I didn't know how to save you. I didn't know how to help you. And that was stuck in his mind
ever
from
since
2022 to 1973. And it's just absolutely gutted him.
Yep.
It's this beautiful, heartwarming reconciliation in New Orleans in the middle of a hurricane. And, you know, it's very poignant that he went back to New Orleans, where that's where they had their reconciliation after everything that's been said and done. And I have no notes on the series. It's fantastic. Okay, I have one.
We have one note, and let's get into that. We have gushed.
That's where it should have ended.
It's where it should have ended, in my humble opinion.
Okay.
I know Anne Rice purists are probably going to yell at us. People who are fans of the movies and the books, I understand. We both do not like how the series ends, which is where we learn that Daniel has published his book, Interview with the Vampire, and he was turned by Armand in Dubai. We don't know the circumstances other than that he was turned by Armand.
I want to know.
I do too. And I hope season 3 they show us. The reason why I don't like this is because we have that line, and Ryan, you mentioned it, where Louis offers a 70-year-old Daniel the dark gift. And Daniel says no. And I wish it would have stayed there, because that was Daniel making a choice. And the reason why I don't really like what we get there is there's just no context. And maybe in season 3, I'll be like, okay, I wish we could have gotten a Daniel that was upset and angry about it. But, you know, he's like rock star. He's being interviewed and he's like, fuck you, man. Doesn't he like suck my dick to the interviewer? And he's calling Louis on his phone, but he's actually communicating telepathically. And he's like, any word from my maker? He takes his glasses off. He's got the eyes. He's got the nails. I wish it would have ended.
They flashed too far forward. And if they were going to end it in New Orleans. If they wanted a cliffhanger, they could have had like this scene where you see Armand take Daniel and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, leave it like that. But they end in this beautiful, poignant love scene in New Orleans between Lestat and Louis, which was just enough. And then they flash forward to the book being published and to Daniel having been turned. And they kind of slow drip that to you by like his attitude. One of our friends noticed his fingernails,
which I didn't notice. I just noticed the glasses.
Completely missed in the interview with about the book. And then, you know, the sunglasses, and then coming out and him being able to hear Louis in his head, the voice.
And we get Louis hears all the other vampires. Like, how dare he now the world knows about us.
Book's been published. All the stories are out. Yeah. You know, now the entire world of vampires know that Louis has broken multiple archaic rules of vampirism. And so we don't know what's going to happen next, but Louis basically says, come and get me.
I am the night.
I am the night. So that's the end of the season. I loved it.
Brilliant show.
I'm so glad that you watched it. I love talking about writing in that sort of way with you.
Me too.
And this show nailed it.
It did.
Outside of the costumes, outside of the casting, outside of the cinematography and all the things that it takes to put a good show together, the most important, and it's hard to find these days, is writing that makes you think, that that comes back, that
surprises you,
that connects to things that you've already heard or seen, and that surprises you, and that's just so eloquent. And I mean, God, this is a love story in so many ways, but it's more than that. It makes you think about, remembering things, the Odyssey of Recollection. It makes you think about humanity and immortality and what that looks like.
So, thank you.
Are we going to get a season 3?
Yes, we sure are. Yeah. Duh. We are. This last summer at Comic-Con, they released a teaser for season 3. Ooh. And they're basing it off of the Vampire Lestat books where he is a rock star. We get a quick kind of clip of Sam Reid in a fucking chartreuse feathered crop toppy thing
with like crimped curly hair,
eyeliner. And at first I was like, oh, is this maybe what he was doing in the 80s?
Maybe. It's
not, because they mention Interview with Vampire the book, and Malloy's there.
Oh, yes. You can hear Malloy in the background. It almost sounds like he's wheezing.
He's coughing.
Coughing.
Either Lestat has like mind choking him or something's going on. But they're doing a documentary of Lestat.
Yeah.
Because Lestat can't be outdone by Louis having given an interview in a book. Lestat has to do a full-ass documentary. I love the part where the makeup person's coming in, like, has the makeup brush, and Lestat just gives them a look and says, "Do I look like I need you?" It's fucking great. No. And he sings. Sam Reid, they've released a full song called Long Face. And so it seems like we're going to be getting Rockstar Lestat, the Vampire Lestat in season 3, and 2025 cannot come soon enough.
I'm ready. I got to wait till 2025.
This is for us.
Oh, wait, this is 2024. Oh my God.
It's a great show. It is in my top 5 television series I've ever watched.
Yes.
Love it. Watch it if you haven't. And if you haven't watched it and you listen to this whole episode, bravo you.
Yeah. Hope you could keep up with it all.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, Ryan.
Yes.
Let's thank the good folks for checking us out today.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about what's unhinged this week?
Do we have anything?
I was going to say Nicole Kidman's hair, but
God.
We can go on. Well, merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
For listening to Once More Unhinged. These episodes come out every Wednesday. Be sure to check out our latest episodes of Once More, a rewatch podcast, where we are almost finished with season 2 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes, this week we're doing I Only Have Eyes for You. And then after that, I think is only 3 more episodes of the whole season 2. We're almost done.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
It is. So for more Unhinged content, please follow us on social media. We are at Once More Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. And, Unhinged is produced by us. Je suis Jen Katz.
Je suis Rion something.
Merci. Adieu.
Adieu. À tout à l'heure.
Au revoir. Vampires.